welcome people to come on, and then we'll start.
Okay, great.
Okay, I'm just gonna make sure that we're live.
Yeah, I always do that as well.
Before you start speaking, and
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, especially if it's a training or something.
yeah, and then I'm going to tag you.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay.
Fabulous. And we are live. Okay, we'll start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Her Story Matters Facebook Live once again. Today, I have an exciting guest. I'm very excited because she's just a huge ball of light and just really very inspiring. And you'll hear all about it as we start. Um, my name is Rhoda. For those who do not know me, some people call me Harriet, and I'm the founder of Her Story Matters. We are running these Facebook Lives as a way to inspire people, empower women, and just to get the positive stories out there so that people know that they're not alone and they can come out of whatever situation they're in, and just to really have something positive on social media because we don't have enough of that. To the replay viewers, I want to say thank you for watching this. Let us know when you're watching it. So just hashtag replay and tell us where you're watching from so that Samantha knows who she's reaching today. Hi, twin. So there's a lady who's just shown up today. Her name is Nigeria, and I call her my twin because she's in the States. Um, and just to say that Samantha is in London. So are you in London? Sorry.
No, sorry, I'm in the middle. I'm in Leicester in the East Midlands.
Okay, I'm sure they're not gonna know where that is, but you can Google that. Yeah,
Right in
because
the
I
middle.
think. Yeah. So today we're talking about Sam's journey. Is it okay if I call you Sam?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Sam's journey, and Sam has had an amazing journey, you guys, and she's going to tell us a bit about it. She has a book, so we're not going to go so much into her details because she has a book. I'd encourage you to buy that book, but it's very, very inspiring. I've got my copy on the way. So I'll allow her to introduce herself and what she does, and then we'll go to the conversation. Just don't forget to let us know where you're watching us from, and to the replay viewers, let us know if you're watching it as a replay, and please share this broadcast so more people will be encouraged because that's what we want to do. Sam, tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you anyway for having me on anyway, Rhoda. Yeah, so myself, it's where shall I start? I'll tell you what I'm doing now, and then we maybe work backwards. So my big passion now is to help people to have a voice, and to share their story. Everybody's got a story. I believe our story is our biggest asset because we have the power to help so many people. If we find the courage and the strength to be able to share authentically, openly, which I appreciate, it can take a while to lead up to that, but your story has the power to help so many people. If we can, you mentioned something a few minutes ago, but I firmly believe that if we can help even one person to not even feel on their own, that is massive. So many people, I feel, underestimate that. But when when you are in a really dark place with whatever is going on in your life, one of the things we all seem to feel is that we're on our own with it, which is a horrible feeling. And so if we can come through whatever we have, and then if you have the inclination to share your story, I absolutely urge you to do it because it's been the most phenomenal journey for me. And that's kind of where I started 3.5, 4 years ago. I had a big desire to share my story. I was really scared about sharing it, or scared about being very open and making myself very vulnerable. But on the other side of that is magic. It's been a super healing journey just for myself. But then if you're touching the lives of others, and I believe that's what we're all here to do, isn't it? if we can help other people. And so, yeah, I got around, I wrote my book. Once I finally got around to doing it, it flooded out of me. 16 days later, I always say the 16 days firmly fixed in my mind, but it was I literally just couldn't stop. I just wanted it all to come out. I was like so elated when I'd done it. It felt so freeing, so liberating, and hugely exciting to, I wanted it out in the world. I wanted it to help other people. Yes, there was fears. Yes, I'd had to work through a lot of things. I'd always been the protector in life, protecting other people. But I knew it was time to share it, because I know the impact of the people's stories it had on me and how that's helped me. So I'd been working up to this for a long time. So I wanted to give that back to other people. And so I wrote that book, published that book, and then I had no idea what was going to happen. I let go of my first business because it didn't resonate with him anymore. I had this was like a real calling, when it's deep in your soul and you get to the point where actually I have no choice, this has got to happen. It was that. And from that, it's created the business. Call it a business, but it's so much more. That I help other people now to share and write their stories, publish their books, as a ghostwriter and as a book coach. And it's just incredible. I think most of all is if I can help people to share, be vulnerable. If I can help people to be vulnerable, there are so many people are fearful of that, but there's so much power in it, and how liberating it is for you, and how when you are able to get to that place, how that can help others. Sorry, that was a bit of a long ramble there.
Oh no, that's fine. Thank you so much for sharing that. I just allow the words to come out because sometimes we structure everything so much and we think we know how it should go, but we don't know who's watching or who's going to watch. And sometimes what we have scheduled is not for the person who is supposed to watch. So when we speak just intuitively and we allow that, I feel like it's more authentic and it reaches the people who are supposed to actually watch it. Tell us a bit about your early life, because I know it was a bit rough. And because when I was reading that, I was like, oh my God, I couldn't believe it because it's so far from who you are right now. Just share a bit about your early life and kind of like the challenges that you went through.
Yeah, so I'm an introvert at heart. I still am. People think I'm pretty outgoing, but actually I am very introverted. But back then, as a young girl, I was very, very shy, quiet. And I think when you are that person, you can be and I lacked in confidence. So I became a prime target for bullies at school. I was bullied about various different things. I was an early developer. I was a bit overweight, and I was quiet. And I think out of those three things, the thing that hurt me the most was being bullied for being quiet, because that felt like really personal, as though there's something really wrong about being a quiet person. And I know I really took that on board. And I sort of fabricated my own stories and interpretations around that. But I took that as being I was a boring person. And when you have that kind of belief about yourself, it's a very damaging one. But yeah, I carried that and a heap load more for many, many years. But yeah, so that was where I was at school. I was a bit of a loner. I've always tended to have close friends rather than big groups of friends. At home, it was quite turbulent. To an outsider looking in, we always had the lovely home, or me and my brother were always dressed lovely. We had lovely holidays abroad, all of these nice things. But inside the home, it wasn't always as you would imagine, because my mum and dad struggled with their emotions, and my dad, his way of dealing with life and problems and himself really was to drink. That obviously has that knock-on effect, which my mum was always struggling with. And when you're in a relationship with someone with any kind of addiction, it's a very lonely place to be. And she was a very lonely person and very sad over the years. And I think that generation as well um, did not seem to have the awareness that a lot more people have now, and particularly with mental health and any kind of personal struggles. We didn't really talk about them so much. Things were really pushed under the carpet a lot. And so that became like behavior, let's keep all these secrets. We don't talk about these things. We just get on with it and suffer really and struggle with them. And I do remember my mum used to say lean on me, but she used to share a lot with me about how she was feeling about my dad. I'd see it myself. And, when you're living with someone with an addiction, I think particularly when they're taking some kind of substance that can change them and change their personality quite quickly, it is quite a scary environment to live in, because you very erratic mood swings. There was anger, you don't know what to expect from one moment to the next. So I think I was living in like the fight or flight from quite a young age and not really realizing that. And again, because I already had some low confidence, maybe low self-esteem, I interpreted a lot of that as this was my fault. Why aren't my parents happy? And from a very young age, I say very young, from about the age of 10, I just know I had formed very deep beliefs about myself when I look back now, that I was really quite a lesser of a person. I had a very, I was speaking to someone about this earlier, about forming like a real belief about myself at my core that I am a bad person, which when you have a belief like that, infiltrates every part of your life and, affects that in everything you do. And so that was kind of like the setting. And gradually, my dad always worked for himself. He was a high achiever. And I think he used to drink to cope with, what he felt he couldn't deal with. And he lacked confidence. He always used to say, drinking gives me confidence. And so through that, his business grew. He was doing really well. And then we moved. We moved from a little village where I was, a city. We're at a little city, inner city, at a school. I had, a few close friends, and then we had to move to a village, tiny little school, completely different culture. I felt like a fish out of water. I think we all did, to be honest. My mum never settled at all. My dad was always at work or drinking at the pub. He wasn't at home so much. So I suppose he didn't notice that as much. But me and my brother had to go to this village school. My brother was younger than me, different character, more outgoing. He seemed to fit in more. I didn't fit in at all. And I think that deepened the beliefs I had about myself. I felt more of a loner, more isolated, and got bullied more. Fast track, a few more years. We were there for about 4 years. And then because of a combination of things, but my dad's business, he lost it with the partner. He also was partnered with another man who was an alcoholic. Both that didn't help matters, so they lost the business quite spectacularly. We lost the house. My dad's dad died all at the same time, so it was a lot for all of us as a family unit. And we had to get out of the house, downsize, didn't rented house for a while, so it was very, very turbulent. And I think eventually this all of these things took its toll on me, and I just reached a point where I just couldn't cope anymore as a young person. And I say I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be in the existence I was in. I did always have some hope. I've always had hope, clung to that hope. But it was a very, very dark time for me, for a very long time, and I'm happy to talk openly about any of that. I have written in great detail about it in my first book, because I feel like if we hold back, a lot of people, especially now I work with, they get very nervous about sharing what could be considered as negative. But to me, that's being vulnerable, that's being real. And if we don't share that aspect, we're leaving a lot out of the equation, because how can you identify with someone if they're saying they've been through bad things but they're not prepared to share it? You know, how can you relate to that? And so I think it's really important to be vulnerable, so we can relate and we can, you know, identify and think, well, I went through that. But then if you've had a transformation, you know, you can share that as well. But the vulnerable bit is really, really important. And so many people shy away from that. So I think that's probably my big mission, is to really talk about that, to really put that on the table.
I really love how you share about your early life, because um, mine was kind of similar but in a different way, because I grew up with a father who was an alcoholic. And
Mm,
I know when it comes to sharing stories as well, it's quite difficult for people to be able to share their story, because their story involves so many other people in there.
mm,
And sometimes people don't know how much to share, so that
mm,
they can allow the other people around them the dignity. And I think that's one of the things that really I found challenging when, when sharing my story at the beginning,
mm,
because you're fearful, you want to protect them so much, and you did say that because in your early life there, you had that role of a protector. So
mm,
when you get older,
mm,
you have all of this in your mind. You're thinking, well, I have to protect everyone and I have to protect myself, and you're only 15. You're not capable of doing all of that. I mean, your brain is not that developed, your
mm,
emotions are not that developed. And wow, it really is a lot. And I want to thank you for sharing that, because I think it's challenging to open up about our
mm,
parents, because there's always this thing about brushing things under the carpet. Oh, our family was really lovely, it was really perfect, and everyone was really happy, but we know it's not true. And sharing about your family does not mean that they were messed up. It just means that
mm.
no one is perfect and everyone is struggling with something,
Exactly.
and addiction is a huge thing. I mean,
Yeah.
being in that environment, because if you've been anywhere near anyone who has addictions, there's a lot of lies that people have to deal with. We
Mm.
had another lady called Sam as well.
Oh, right.
And
Okay.
she shared about her alcohol addiction. And as she was talking about it, I actually
Mm,
realized that there's so many things that come with addiction, because people are trying to hide it and people are
mm,
trying to appear perfect. And because there's that going on, there's secrecy. And you can imagine, in a marriage there's secrecy, in the
mm,
home there's secrecy, and this is you trying to protect everyone. You've moved into a new place, you're protecting yourself, you're protecting your family from all of that. So I can kind of like understand that struggle without you having to go so much into detail about it. So I want to encourage people to go and get your book. So I'm going to just mention this, but I don't really want us to talk so much about it.
mm.
In your book, you talk about being taken to therapy at 15.
Yeah.
Um, One of the things with mental health, especially that I found among young people, is so misunderstood.
Mm,
If people think that, well, they're just young, how can they be depressed, how can they have social anxiety, and how can they be like this? Can you
mm,
just share a little bit about your experience then,
mm,
and how how it led to that, and then just coming out of that?
mm. Yeah, that's been a huge part of my journey, is that side, because I think I had this very firm belief from, like, say, a young age, that there was something. The one thing that I was always saying to myself and asking myself for years was, what the hell is wrong with me? Because I was absolutely convinced there was something really wrong with me. I was really flawed. I was bad. I was, this thing, and I could never quite put my finger on it. And I suppose I was always looking for reasons for that, to put a name, a label to it, as much as that I think there's times where labels can be helpful, but there's times when they can be very unhelpful. I think it's very individual. But for me back then, it wasn't helpful at all. But I was desperately looking for one because I needed to explain what was this thing wrong with me. And so my behavior, I cut myself off more and more. And as I say, eventually I was admitted to this adolescent unit for teenagers where I was there for 16 months. That I wanted to go because I didn't know how to cope in the world anymore. I was suicidal. I was at the end of my tether. However, it was a safe place to be, but I think it really kind of almost institutionalized me because you lived there, that was it. You were cut away from society. That they got you to, excuse me, the young people there, we had to sort of go into the society and do various things. But largely I felt it was a hiding place. So when I came out of there, I really, really struggled. And by this point, I'd been given medications, the typical antidepressants. I think I had some antipsychotics at one point, tranquilizers, sleeping tablet, all of these things. And you're only a young person. But this theme of secrecy, it was never really, what was going on was never spoken about. Because by that point, this whole protector thing, which I now see as a lot of that is like trauma bonding, where you're protecting your parents or whoever they are. They didn't speak openly about it because my mum was protecting my dad. And so that led to all of these like pent up feelings, a lot of anger. And, when you bottle that anger up, it turns into depression, a low mood. It's all of these things I wanted to harm yourself and, not being able to express how you really feel. I think that's another reason for being very vulnerable now, and sharing everything, because it's so freeing to be able to express yourself. Excuse me. One moment there. And I think from there, I'd been given these labels. I then got involved, excuse me, into the adult psychiatric system, because for me that had become my normal. And this is one of the key things for me, and I only realised this many, many, many years down the line, probably 20 years down the line, I had this awareness that had become my identity. And even though it was very painful, because I speaking of addiction, food was mine. I was bulimic for 12 years, and that was a hell on its own. But in a way, it was safe, and it was a world that I knew, and I didn't have to deal with anything else. I didn't have to deal with these feelings that I'd pushed down for years of feeling very invisible by my parents. I didn't, of feeling very alone in the world. I didn't have to speak about those things. I could put all my energy and focus onto an addiction. When you have an addiction, my God, it takes up most of your life. So it's a brilliant distraction in that way, but very damaging. I'm not sort of advocating that at all, but in a way of a distraction, yeah, massive. And I clung on to these labels for many years, psychiatric labels of various things, and it kind of almost sickens me now when I look back on it. But to me, that was very safe. But I realised much later on that it was become my identity, and when something's your identity, that just controls everything. It controls how you think, your beliefs about you, other people, the world. Everything was pretty skewed thinking, and how I would feel. I spent years, and I look back, it's hard to believe, but I spent years feeling really depressed every day, not wanting to be here. And it's like, how the heck do you live like that? But people do. And when I think now, if ever I have a low day now, or I mean, at the minute I'm going through something, with a member of my family, and I have low moments, but even just feeling that, I think, how did you exit dark night of the soul? Someone said, yes. How did I live with that for so long? But it was an identity. So that was a firm belief about who I was. And for me, one of the major things to shift me out of that, because it's been a very long, gradual process. I think it could have been a lot quicker had I had all of this awareness, but there we are. It's given me the story, hasn't it? So it's changing my beliefs. I had CBT. I found that really, really helpful. But that was like years and years down the line. I had to heal a lot of things first. So it was only in my sort of early 30s that I really started to embark on a healing journey, because I think until then I just pushed it all away. I wasn't ready to go there. It was too painful. And I don't think I knew how to be honest. I don't think I'd had anyone to clearly guide me. And so, yeah, my identity level was that I was a bad person. I was a mentally ill person. But there was bonuses with that, as in it kept me safe. I suppose it lessened expectations of me in some ways, but at the same time, I had a huge level of self-loathing. I hated myself for being that person. So there was always in conflict, lots of conflict. But I could only really start to properly heal when I started to address what I believed about myself. Thank you. Stephen just said on there, great conversation, ladies.
So Stephen is a very I call him very enlightened, because when we have conversations, even with what he's saying, I think people go through the dark night of the soul and they don't really know what it is.
Mm,
And one of the things that I came to understand with that is sometimes you don't even need someone to help you start understanding what is going on. I think sometimes
mm,
it just happens. Um, I speak to so many people and they'll say, it just happened. I don't know how it happened. I just started maybe reading something. And this is
mm,
when intuition comes in. You just start reading something, or you start listening to someone, and then things just start making sense. Or, things just start to shift without you actually knowing what exactly it is. And I just want to thank you for sharing that, because when I listen to people speak, I hear what is actually not being said
mm,
by listening to what is being said, and I know that it's really loaded, because being 15 and having to deal with all of that, and having to deal with school, and then having to have labels. I mean, even with the self-esteem, the self-esteem comes in so many different ways, and
mm,
it's always it always comes because we compare ourselves with our
mm,
surroundings and with other people, and we find that we don't measure up, and our perspective is so different. So because our perspective is so flawed, we're looking at it through the lens of our issues and our problems, and not through the lens of who we really are as as soul beings, not what we are going through, um,
yeah.
but who we really are. So we kind of like just miss the moments, and then start comparing ourselves. And I always say, once you start comparing something very good, you devalue it, because you can't compare things. You can't compare people. You just can't compare anything. Everything has its beautiful qualities. And I love how you talk about the way you identified with the labels, because I think we all do that in one way or another. And sometimes
Mm,
it's not even, the labels we might have might not be low self-esteem or anything else. It can be one of luck. You identify with luck.
mm,
You identify with poverty. You identify with
mm,
no intelligence or anything. So I think labels are very interesting things, and I really do not like labels, because I feel like as human beings we are always evolving.
mm,
So how I identified yesterday is not going to be the same way I identify today.
mm,
And it's because we are continuously looking at ourselves. And one of the things I want to ask you is, you talk about having that journey and going through that journey, and where you are now, and reflecting back, what did you learn about yourself? that has nothing to do with labels? What did you actually learn about yourself? Because when we ask people this, they're always like, oh, I didn't know I was this strong, I didn't know I was this amazing. But that's still a label, right? And that can change anytime. But what did you
Mm.
really learn about yourself, in that?
I think probably the biggest thing for me, and this didn't come until much, much, much later, in my 40s, actually, and this shifted so much more for me, was actually being able to let go of a lot of the self-blame. Because when you're going through something, and even when you've come out of it, you can still have a lot of beliefs attached. And even into my 40s, I was carrying some of this bad person, troublemaker, kind of flawed person character. And all of a sudden, there was one day, and I just happened to see a tweet. I used to use Twitter a lot for my business, and I just happened to see a tweet, which led to another tweet. And I read this person's tweet, and when just something stops you in your tracks, and I just broke down in tears. And it was like the biggest light bulb moment. And it might sound incredible to other people listening that they wouldn't, why on earth wouldn't I have realized this? But I really hadn't, because that belief was so deep. But I suddenly realized, oh my gosh, I was never actually a bad person. I was really struggling with my environment. And it was just, it sounds incredible, but I carried that all of that time and firmly believed I was at fault. There was something really wrong that I'd done on some level, and I think these labels were desperately trying to put a meaning to it. But I was able to, after that, I read this tweet led to this book. I read this book, and I just shifted so much from that. I was able to really start changing my identity, because I didn't have to keep blaming myself for this person I thought I was anymore. So that was massive, massive for me. And I think from there, I've been able to have a lot more. One of the things I really battled with um, for a many years was my identity. So obviously, I hadn't really got a clue who I was, because I was piling on all of these things. If I wasn't given them, I was putting them on myself. So it was really like going back. So there's been many years of like peeling a lot of that off, and who I really am, but then having the belief around that person. And I think to be able to have self-belief, it has been huge, because I had none of that. I had none of that. It's impossible to have it when you don't even know who you are. So, and I lived in doubt for many years. And, I have quite a solid belief in myself and my capabilities now. And when you have that, and it brings a certainty with it. And when you have that, that just gives you so much more confidence and self-esteem, and so I've really been able to build on that. But I wasn't able to have that until I sorted the identity level out, and to realize it wasn't me. I could stop blaming myself, because blame and shame and guilt were just piled and piled and piled on. And so I've been able to take a lot of that off. And I also think, yeah, courage, being really strong. It gives me, I don't know, it might sound a bit weird, but when I have really tough things thrown at me now, what life can do and does to everybody, 9 times out of 10, I don't know, I just get real strength from it. I don't know, I'm able to turn it around, and it empowers me. And that allows me to be really strong and support other people as well. And then also learning to really manage my feelings. I'm a very, excuse me, again, labeled but highly sensitive person. I did recognize that about myself. There's a lot of truth in that. And, you know, I've always felt things probably more than some people would. And learning to manage those deep feelings, and channel, you know, my thinking, my thoughts. And because, and also being able to sort of calm and that self-talk we have, because I used to be in a state of anxiety most of the time. I'd have panic attacks. I'd just be anxious about everything all the time. I had fears about everything. It was a horrible way to live. And I still have bits of anxiety now. I think it's normal to have some, but it doesn't rule my life like it did. You know, I've let an awful lot go. And I think the ability to let go as well, that one on its own is a biggie, because I've always been a very determined person, um, and I tend to hang on to things a lot, hold on to them too long sometimes. So that learning that ability to let go has been a big lesson for me as well.
I was listening to what you were saying, and I think one of the things that is very evident with your story and your journey is how self-aware you were and still are. I know you say you're very sensitive, and I think that's really just being an empath. But I think also you have a lot of self awareness, because being able to journey through and shed so much. I mean, based on how your life began, and kind of like the guilt and the blame and everything that you were carrying, and being able to journey through without, you know, being institutionalized again, to come away from that because you didn't go through that route. um and I think I would just love to hear a bit more about the light worker, because when I did put that out on, you know, on Facebook, when I was putting that from, you know, darkness to light worker, it attracted a lot of conversation, and I was getting so many messages with regards to what do you mean by light worker. If you could just speak a little bit about that aspect, because people have different understanding with regards to that, but how do you see that?
Well, until a few years ago, I'd never even heard of the term, and I thought, what on earth's that? Is it something to do with light fittings or something? I really didn't know. It was a new one on me, and I think my interpretation of it was like light workers are like really spiritual people. They're really yeah, really spiritual people. And and I don't know, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But what it means, I think, more for me is that you're able to, I think, my interpretation of it is that from what you've been through yourself, and you've come through on a journey, and you can now share that and help, if you're helping other people with that, and sort of shining your light, shining that torch. You know, I feel like I've taken away, you know, let go of a lot of these things that were holding me back, full of dark energy, full of, you know, all the low vibrational emotions, you know, lots of pain, lots of depression, lots of anxiety, lots of fear, lots of jealousy, lots of anger, all of these things. I've taken a lot of that out. And when you take a lot of that out, you know, you've got a big hole, but the light, who you naturally are, you know, like as we're saying about you as a soul, can shine through. And to me, that's what a light worker is. So I don't think it's necessarily someone who practices Reiki or does this specific thing. I think it's someone who's worked on themselves a lot and have shed a lot of their darkness, you know, these things I've talked about, and are shining brightly to help other people.
I like how you say it, because I think people tend to consider a light worker or someone who's shining their light, because those are some of the terminologies that people use. And I think they're very personal to everyone. And I love how you say it's being able to, I don't think it's kind of like getting rid of it. I think it's more of transmuting it.
Mm,
I think it's being able to kind of like be able to understand where the fear is coming from, and being
mm,
able to channel that into a positive way instead of
mm,
being low vibration. um,
mm.
and it actually just really shows on your face. When you were saying, when I was in my 30s, I was like, huh? And then you were like, when I was in my 40s, I'm like, huh? I don't know how old she is, but you look really, really young. And you
Oh,
don't
thank
look,
you.
honestly, you don't look like what you've been through. Um, and,
Yeah,
and
I always
I
say that.
sincerely mean it.
So
You don't look
I,
like what you've been through.
bless you. I've just turned 50 actually on the 1st of October.
That's amazing. You look so, so good. And one of the things that I kind of like want us to wrap up with and kind of like just go with the flow is, you shared today about, your brother having COVID. I know you reached out yesterday, and I know it was kind of like it's overwhelming. And with regards to that as well, there's been so much going on. There's been so much tension, and some
Mm,
people are afraid. Some people are thinking, I don't want to catch this. Some people are thinking, actually, it doesn't exist. That there's so much
mm,
negative energy in the air
mm,
already. And to
mm,
hear that a family member has caught it,
mm,
it kind of like triggers, there are some triggers that are let off within you, and some of it is subconscious that comes forward, and you have to deal with it. And I love how you just shared it on Facebook, and you're very transparent about it. I would just like to know how you're processing that, for those who might be processing something similar or
mm.
going through a tough time at the moment, and just offer your perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that's really why I shared that post. I wasn't going to write about it because writing about things is always my natural go-to in terms of dealing with things, and then the sharing of it. And I was thinking, well, my family are not as open as me. I didn't want to do anything to upset them, but then I think, well, it's going to help me, and if it can help other people, because I wanted to share what has helped me, because I think I've always been quite obsessed with anything about getting to the root of something, find out what's at the root. Otherwise, you're only sort of the whole sticking plaster thing. And so last night, it's been a very difficult week, obviously, and I did nearly cancel this. Not so much that I'm going to be really emotional and start crying and things. I've had my moments, but because it's almost like a bit of guilt came in, thinking, well, should I be doing this when my brother is seriously ill at the moment, and he's we don't know, he's at the peak point. It is very difficult. But then I thought, actually, this is what I feel. It is about being a light worker as well. Is like, well, okay, this is going on, so I'm going to share about this, because this is obviously not an easy time. But if I was to not come on here and share about my story, my experiences, and then we've get to talk about this as well, that's going to be cutting out a whole lot of things that could help other people. So I wouldn't be doing that justice. So I thought, actually, no, it isn't selfish. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. It's not going to make any difference to my brother. So I'm just going to show up. And yeah, it's, I think, the nature of this illness. I think I'd not, this year, I've not wanted to hugely focus on it. Um, I think everyone's had their own way of dealing with it. I do believe whatever we focus on in life really expands. And, so anything fear will expand, anything joyful will expand. And so after years of expanding fear and anger and depression, I really choose not to do that now, as much as I can, and focus on like the really joyful things. And so I took it in. I think I remember at the start of the COVID, in the UK, when we were going into lockdown and everything, I just saw the effect it was having on people and on businesses. And my purpose is so huge to me now. You know, it is a core part of why I'm here. I know that. And so I was like, well, no, this is not going to affect my business. And actually, it might sound a bit warped, but it gave me a lot of strength. It made me really motivated more than ever. And I just thought, my God, you know, the world needs stories of inspiration and hope more than ever before, and really do now. And so, yeah, I really threw myself into my business, to be honest. And I felt a bit fearful at the start because it was, you know, it has been like this global thing. It's just been crazy. And we've given all this information. There's people with all kinds of beliefs out there, but I really sort of focused a lot on my purpose, and that really served me. It's helped other people. So this is kind of like being like a real shock. My brother has got diabetes and he's got some other health problems, so he is classed as the vulnerable. And he has he's been really cautious throughout the whole, you know, this year. He's, you know, kept himself isolated a lot, and so for him to catch it was a shock anyway. And then also, but the nature of it and how quickly he's gone downhill. I think it's been so fast you don't have time to process it properly. And it's like this feeling of shock. And every now and then, you know, my parents are obviously really upset. He is seriously ill. But I've got a really strong belief and hope that he will come through this, because one thing that's really helped me. So if you're going through this right now, if I always want to sort of educate myself a bit, so find out. So I've been, you know, looking on the internet. I wanted to find out factually stages of the illness and how it progresses, because if you're in the unknown, and a lot of this COVID is like still the unknown, but if you've got an idea of what to expect, you know, it isn't a linear recovery. You can get a bit better and then really drop back down, and then before you start getting better again. And it tends to follow a pattern. And so knowing that stops you from reacting maybe as emotionally and going into fear and panic. So that's helped me. And then also hearing, again, always go to it, but hearing other people's stories about it. People who have been in ICU on ventilators, you know, it's really not looked good. They've been in a really vulnerable position, but they've got better, and they're here now telling their story. Excuse me, dry throat. And it's reading those stories like really helped me as well, and hearing what they said. And they were saying things like, if you are able to, obviously you like my brother, he's rigged up to like oxygen, this machine, so he can't move far, but they have said to him, like, move as much as you can in your chair, because that will distribute the oxygen more around your body. I was reading about this man last night, and he'd been absolutely exhausted. Even when he could barely, you know, get up, he made himself, because by moving around, it really helped him with his distributing his oxygen around his body. And so to hear things like that, and I just did mention that to my brother today. Excuse me, all this talking, I've done a lot of talking today. And we were just having that knowledge, it just helps fear, because it's very easy to spiral into fear with something very unknown like this. And, you know, when it's someone that you really love, and, you know, I did feel I have felt very upset, obviously, and I was very tearful last night. But then I think about what I've learned in life and things like I've shared today, and I was like, no, there's no point, because if I really give in to that fear and that emotion and let my thoughts start dictating to me, it's a spiral down, and then you're no good for anybody. And so I give myself quite a tough talking to last night, and this morning. It's been like hard to focus on work and things like that, but actually I've been trying to be gentle on myself. So if you're going through something like this, be kind to yourself, do what you feel like you can do. but really think about how you are thinking, what you're focusing on. Because if I was to sit and keep thinking about my brother in the state he's in, I go to pieces. So instead, I'm choosing to think of him as healthy as well. You know, I only saw him two and a half weeks ago. We had a lovely meal out with the family. I keep thinking of that, and it makes me feel much stronger. And then I can like be much stronger for him. I can be stronger for my parents. Makes me feel better. And then if you can share that message, it could help others. So yeah, to me, it always comes back to the story we're telling ourselves, and just make sure, you know, where you're putting your focus, and make sure it is on something that's going to serve you and others, because you do always have that choice about what you're thinking about. You can feel like you're not, and I think that's once you get into that spiral of anxiety, and then physical things start happening, or your physiology is changing, and that freaks you out, and before you know it, you're in a full-blown panic attack. So it's nip it in the bud at the start and just be aware of, like, what am I thinking, what am I focusing on, and that can change everything.
Thank you for sharing that. Because I love what you said. Is I looked at the text and I felt so touched because I wanted us to cancel it. I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, this must be very difficult. And you said, no, I'm more focused on my mission. I'm more focused on my mission. When you said that, I felt like, oh my goodness, that just made me go into this whole introspective perspective thing. And I just really love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. And
Welcome.
we will put links of your books and your business and everything to do with you on the comment section, so people know how to find you, how they can work with you, because you are just so phenomenal. You're amazing.
Oh,
I want us to finish with this, and it keeps on jumping onto me. I kept on wanting to go on different things, but this just kept on jumping onto me, and I realized that it's a very positive way to end this live. And
mm,
what a perfect way to end it, and with a perfect person to end it with. Stephen said, being is living.
mm.
What does that mean to you?
I think, what does that mean to me? So that means, again, goes back to the self-awareness. It's like a question I'm asking myself a lot at the moment with, I'm doing some work with my subconscious, is who am I being? Who am I being, rather than what am I doing? So it's like, and I've asked that actually with regards to what I'm going through with my brother. Who am I being for my brother? Who am I being for me? Who am I being for my parents? I am choosing to be brave. I'm choosing to be strong. I'm choosing to be supportive. And for me, that's what being is. Being is living. So it's not about what you're doing, it's about who you're being as a person.
Thank you so much. I think for me, being is just be in this present moment, and
Mm,
giving all my attention and all my everything towards this particular moment, because it's the moments that actually count. And tomorrow does not count because it's not here yet. We don't know if it's going to get here or not, but what we're sure of is the now. And who are you being? Who are you choosing to be? I think it's a positive way to end this conversation,
mm,
um, because it's how we see ourselves. It's how we choose to live the now. And Healing Hands is saying, thank you for showing up.
mm,
Um, and I just want to say thank you so much for showing up, because I know, everything that was going on. And for someone who, with your journey, with, everything that you have to juggle, you have your own life as well, you've got your own family, and just being able to be really authentic and vulnerable. I think what we're missing so much in this world is a vulnerability. And I
definitely.
think when we're more vulnerable,
Yeah.
we allow others to just be, right?
It makes it okay for other people. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Sam, for showing up. Thank you so much with everything
Okay.
going on. I'm wishing your brother well, and I'll be following his journey so
Oh,
closely. And we are just so invested in this. And yeah, this is awesome. Just choose to be. And yeah, that's true. Choose to be. In this present moment, who are you choosing to be? What are you choosing to focus on?
mm,
And we do hope that it's something positive, something that would change your life, and really allow others to just be, and to be their best selves, because vulnerability allows us to be our best selves. We focus so much on perfection. Perfection does not exist. I
mm.
had
Oh,
an
damn.
amazing um, perfection does not exist,
No.
literally. I remember us having this conversation in a live session, and this psychologist made a comment. He said, "We are all flawed." And at that time, I was just thinking to myself, "Oh my goodness, how dare you say that we're all flawed?" But then, as I was processing that, because you're on live and we're
Mm,
processing that, I actually realized that we hang on to perfection, we hang on to purity, and what we hang on to is non-existent, because there's no such thing as perfection. We're all flawed. There's no such thing as purity, because how you see purity is different. When a baby is born, we project all our mishaps and whatnots and whatever to that baby, by expecting that baby to be perfect, right?
mm.
And
Yeah.
and that would be the perfect face of perfection, a newborn baby, right? A
Mm,
perfect face of purity, but we project everything onto that baby, and in doing so we distort what purity really is. So I just found that very, very interesting. And as we end today, I just want to thank you again for showing up. Thank you
thank
for
you.
being thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for writing your book, because
Oh,
it
thank you.
is it's just opened up amazing healing sessions for others. And I don't know if you want to say anything before we say goodbye.
Yeah, just if you are going through a really tough time at the moment, just listen back maybe to this conversation. Just you're all got so much power within. I think so many of us just give our power away far too easily. You're more powerful than you ever know that you are. You've got the strength to get through anything. I firmly believe that. And if you do feel like you ever want to share your story and you want help with that, then I'd love to help you. Feel free to connect with me or reach out to me.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Thank you for your lovely comments, for your encouraging comments. Thank you for showing up as well, because you've shown up for yourself. I hope you've been inspired, and I hope you can take something from this that you can apply to your lives. And please do share this video. We need more people inspired and more people happy and living their best lives, as we would say.
Mm,
Take care. Have a lovely week. And for those of you who celebrate Halloween, happy Halloween in advance. Take care. Bye.
bye.